What's good, YouTube? Dmgaming here, guys, and in today's video we are going to explore the history behind the samurai warriors as well as some shinobi stuff as well to give you an even better insight on Ghost of Tsushima. Now guys, before we get into the video, guys, join that pancake stack, guys, by hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications. Also, guys, like I said, once a month I'm going to select 4 people to be a part of the Geo stack, and with that you will get a $10 PlayStation or Xbox gift card, whichever one you so choose. So I'm not rolling the intro, guys, because I'm in the process of making a new intro to support the content that I'm running on the channel. But yesterday we saw the state of play, the 18-minute gameplay that I'm going to show here in the background here in a second. Well, I'm just going to roll it while I'm talking. I don't think it's going to matter. But the thing about the gameplay, I will break that down. But before I get into actually breaking down gameplay, I want to make sure that we have a proper understanding not only about the game itself, but about the history. And in yesterday's video, I talked about basically the background of the entire setting with the Mongols coming over with Kublai Khan and taking over the island of Tsushima. So in today, I want to give a more backdrop about the shinobi. Not the shinobi. Yeah, well, the shinobi, but also the samurai and the shinobi. More the samurai. So, guys, you got to understand this about the samurai. The samurai started out, they didn't start out like the famous lore-driven things that we know today. Samurai actually started out as tax collectors. Yeah, they started out as tax collectors for the the feudal lords, or what you would call the feudal lords were also called daimyo, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. The daimyo or feudal lords, the samurai worked for them as like tax collectors and stuff like that. They were tax collectors. And everybody knows, like, nobody likes tax collectors. Even in biblical times, tax collectors were not the people that you wanted to be around and talk to and stuff like that. But anyway, and being a tax collector was a dangerous job. So the samurai developed martial arts, judo and karate, and they also that's when they began to carry weapons and stuff like that with them, because being a tax collector was a dangerous job. And so they were as far as society standards, they were at the bottom. They were at the bottom. They weren't famed and all of that. Like it's like kind of like humble beginnings type of story, the story of the samurai. And so eventually, as history went on, the daimyo, or the feudal lords, began to war with each other. And long story short, these wars led to a feudal lord or daimyo winning the battle and becoming a shogun. And what a shogun is basically a military dictator. This was interesting because the samurai, like I said, worked for the feudal lords in their area. And so once they became like military dictators, or the shogun, that raised the status of the samurai as well. So they went from tax collector to basically the right-hand men, henchmen of the daimyo, or the feudal lords. Like, so you can kind of see how even the daimyo status was raised. Like, being a shogun, they were second to only the emperor, and in some instances they were actually the ones running the country, as opposed to the emperor, who later became just more or less the face of the country in Japan and stuff like that. Also, like, there was, so basically these disputes led to the growth of the samurai. After these things went on, and the shogun kind of took over. Well, the shogun, and like I said, there wasn't different shogun at the same time. There was like just one shogun. But anyway, so the status of the samurai began to raise. His status began to raise, and they began to marry like these the women who were attached to like wealthy and well prominent men. So this boosted their status even more. And so they began to be in a position where they were not only, you know, revered fighters and things like that, but, you know, they were They had money. They bought land and things like that. And you can understand from the noble standpoint, the people's standpoint, that this wasn't very cool. Like you had people that was basically hating. They already didn't like samurai before, but people began to like them as far as the status was concerned. But there were people who still didn't like the samurai. And then next, kind of like in the next part of that history was the Sengoku Sengoku Jedi, if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Basically, it's the Japan Civil War. And during this time, things were hard. Every country basically had their own civil war. Japan had theirs. It was no different. And in this time, an interesting thing began to happen. The shogun and the daimyos noticed that the samurai started becoming more aggressive and basically bloodthirsty and things like that. I mean, they going from a position of low rank in society to a position of high rank and stuff like that. And guys, don't get me wrong, daimyo were also samurai. So it wasn't like if you were a samurai, you couldn't become a daimyo and later a shogun. Like that was the ladder to step up. You were a noble, regular person. Hey, and if you fought well in the military and stuff like that, you became samurai. And from samurai, you could become a daimyo or a lord. And then you could also become a shogun if it so happened. And it's very interesting because in the game, they actually call, and his name is Jin Sakai. I don't know why I was calling him Masakai. I don't know. But his name is Jin. His last name is Sakai. And in the game, in the trailer, and I'm going to play the story trailer again to kind of put all of this together, they actually call him Lord Sakai. So it's my belief that at some point in the game, he also is going to become a lord or a daimyo. Now, I want y'all to notice something very interesting here, because if you look right here, you notice he's carrying two weapons, two swords. Well, guess what? This is also historical because samurai at this time of their prominence, they were able to carry two weapons. Only two people were able to carry them, the samurai and the noblemen. And the two weapons were the long sword and the short sword, in which you will see him actually use these. The long sword was the katana, and the short sword is called the wakizashi. Am I saying that right? Wakizashi? I don't know. If I'm mispronouncing it, y'all, I'm so sorry, but it's the wakizashi. And basically, it's the dagger. It's the shorter sword dagger they were using close quarters. Now, the katana was labeled basically like the soul of the samurai was in the katana. It's a very honorable weapon and things like that. And they used it, yes, but later they didn't. And starting out, samurai didn't even use katana. They used bows and arrows and spears. It wasn't until later on, during like the reign of the shoguns and stuff like that, taking over, that the katana became a more prominent weapon. Interesting thing happened during the Civil War, though. Because the shogun and the feudal lords started realizing how the samurai started to build themselves up, like they were getting hungry for power and stuff like that, because they felt their status being threatened. The feudal lords did something very interesting. They were the ones who introduced Bushido. Am I pronouncing that right? Guys, I'm butchering these words, man. Bushido. They were the ones who introduced that. And the reason why they introduced it was to make the samurai more controllable in a sense. And it adopted from Buddhism in another religion over there. I can't pronounce the name of it. But they the ones that adopted Bushido into the samurai culture. They made it the way of the samurai, and they pampered it up to make it seem like this honorable thing and stuff like that. When in the background, guys, the reason for them doing it was to be able to control the samurai, to keep them, basically to protect their own positions in a sense, really. So I thought that was very interesting to learn that, why they implemented that or how that became implemented. And we know seppuku, was a honorable way of suicide, or it was considered suicide. It was an honorable ritual to kill yourself, and the samurai would do this even in honor of the daimyos daimyos and the feudal lords and stuff like that. So this is very, very interesting that the game takes place with this. You know, you see through this history the humble beginnings of the samurai rising to a position of prominence. So what does it have to do with the shinobi? What does it have to do with the ninjas? Guys, ninjas were assassins. Anybody could be a ninja. A samurai could be a ninja. You see what I'm saying? And you see in the story trailer how in the beginning he's teaching Jin about the way of the samurai and have honor, and when you kill your opponent, look them in the face and things like that. And you see here in the gameplay, Jin is fighting in the form of the samurai. Now guys, one thing I don't want y'all to get twisted about the game, there's not a class per se. No, there's a way that you approach battle. Eventually you will take on the role of the ghost, but what the Ghost of Tsushima really is basically a samurai named Jin who takes on ninjutsu, not ninjutsu, but the way of the shinobi. It's a ninja's way of fighting, because like I said, ninjas were assassins. They would attack from the shadows. They would use poison. They would use smoke bombs. The arrow daggers, I can't remember what they're called. I can't think right now, but they would use those as well. Like, the tools that you will get in this game are tools that ninjas use. And this is why it's called the Ghost. This is why it's frowned upon in the way of the samurai, and why Jin's master later tells him, like in the story trailer, that, you know, you're going down a dark path. You know, it wasn't the way of the samurai, and it was the way really that samurai kind of were before the feudal lords introduced bushido, which is probably why they introduced it, you know. And society looked down on ninjas because they were mercenaries, they were assassins, they were like the CIA, they were like the undercover spies. And like I said, anybody could be a shinobi. Like, you could have your feudal lord could be undercover, like he could be a ninja, he could be a shinobi, you know, a police officer, a merchant, you know. And there were people who would spend their entire lives and people would never knew that they were a shinobi or a ninja. And so they were not revered very highly in society. So you have the samurai even looking down upon them. And the crazy thing is samurai, they weren't perfect. They were doing some shady stuff as well. Even, you know, whenever you're dealing with power and people, you're going to have some shady stuff go on. But you have these samurai who start at the bottom being tax collectors to rise up to a position of authority and power, only to turn around and look down on someone else like the ninjas and the shinobi. Like, you see what I'm saying? Eventually, guys, long story short, the samurais fall from grace. You know, now I don't think we'll see that in this game per se, but it's very interesting to note that. So right here you see him fighting in the way of the shinobis. You know, he's not a shinobi, he's a samurai. So I know I've said that in previous videos that he is a samurai, yes, but the tactics are that of shinobi. The stalking, the assassination, that kind of stuff is all ninja. The little smoke bomb right here, the distraction thing, all of that is the way of the ninja. And that's why in the game his master and other people don't like it. And that's why the Mongols fear them. Who doesn't fear an assassin, especially with the lore surrounding shinobi, because you don't know who the shinobi are. All you know, they're the people of the shadows. So yes, of course, when you start to hear that this thing is going around, you're gonna be fearful and things like that. You know, you're not expecting it. It's a ghost. You see what I'm saying? So let's go back to the story trailer, because I want to kind of walk you back through this once again, like I did in the other video. So let me,
Jin, when we fight, we face our enemy head on.
Okay, so once again, this is Kid Jinsaku. And it's either his master or it could be the daimyo of that region. Because guys, like I told you, later, Jin is going to become a daimyo, because they even call him Lord Sakai, Lord. And he even I'm going to show you that part in the story trailer. So this could be the daimyo or the feudal lord for that particular region.
When we take their life, we look them in the eye.
When we take the life, we look them in the eye. He's teaching him
and
respect and honor. See, he's teaching him the ways of bushido, which, like I told you, was only implemented to actually control the samurai, which was messed up.
This is what makes us samurai.
And then, of course, like I said, the battle here on the coast with the Mongols showing up and stuff like that. So you're starting to see a little bit different. Also, guys, I want to note that at this point in time in history, once the shogun took over, like once the daimyos had their wars, and the winner of the war would become the shogun, who would be the military dictator. Also at that time, the samurai became more of a military hand rather than a right-hand man kind of guy, like, you know, tax collector type stuff. They rose in status and they became basically the military of the shogun. So
We will face death and defend our home.
now you see them wearing different armor pieces and stuff like that. Like I said, they all serve a purpose, which we know in the game as well. Okay, so right here, this is not a samurai. You can tell by the clothing that's on his back. That's a fur, and it's very. I mean, it's the same thing that the Mongols wear. See the same fur, and you'll see that later on as well. You know, and we also know it's not a samurai because he's only carrying one weapon here. We don't see two weapons. See right there? I'm going to turn the caption on real quick so y'all can see that he actually calls him. See right there? He calls him Lord Sakai. He's recognizing him as the Lord, a feudal lord. So at some point in time, Jin becomes a feudal lord in this game. So that's going to be important to understand the lore behind all of that.
You and I are both survivors.
I am samurai.
No, you are more than that. You are the ghost.
See, obviously at this point in the story, his lore is being spread. He's telling me he's the ghost. And what he's going to tell him is to tell his people. This is even more proof that Jin is going to become a daimyo or a lord, because he's going to tell him to tell his people.
Convince your people to join me, and I will give them peace.
We will never serve you.
And see, then you could see the ninjutsu style of stuff right here. That is the how do you pronounce this? Wakazashi? Sorry, I'm gonna get this down. But that's that blade that I was telling you about that samurais carry. The Wakasashi. If I'm mispronouncing that, I'm sorry. But that's the blade right there. You can actually see him using that in the game. So that's really interesting as well.
I've never seen a samurai fight like that. It was nothing.
You are more than a samurai. He is a vengeful spirit, back from the grave.
See, she says right there, he's a vengeful spirit. That is how the samurais were before the daimyo introduced Bushido into their culture. So for him to be reverting back to that, you know, it's a big deal, and it's not a good thing, and it's gonna upset a lot of people, but it's necessary. You see what I'm saying? And that, like I said, he does things the way of the shinobi as well, which is looked down upon by samurai.
To slaughter the Mongols.
If you continue down this
And see, that's why you have him now with the mask and stuff like that. He even resembles the shinobi.
path, you will be no better than the Mongols.
See, if he's telling them, if you continue on this path, you'll be no better than the Mongols.
I trained you to fight with honor.
He trained him in the way of the samurai, and he's going back to how they were before Bushido.
Died on the beach. The Khan deserves to suffer.
See, so obviously the people that Jin is going to be talking to is gonna probably, guys, that may come up in the game. The fact that Bushido was introduced to control the samurai, and you need to go back to your roots, your savagery, your vengefulness. You need to go back to your ruthfulness. You know what I'm saying? Ruthlessness, you know. I think that may actually come up in the game. And if it does, that is going to be super cool, because I was sitting here wondering, how are they going to be able to tell him or convince him or take him away from the way of the samurai? Maybe through telling them the truth about history. So we'll see. And you can see here he's wielding the katana and the wakizashi right there as well.
I am samurai, but I will sacrifice everything for my home.
So guys, I hope today's video has made sense to you. Like, there is so much history here, and I don't think that I've missed much, if anything, aside from like also, you know, through status, the samurai would do stuff like they would have to study calligraphy and painting and stuff like that. They did a lot of upper class things whenever the Shogun era was around, because like I said, they were put in prominence. So they did things that prominent people did and stuff like that. But also, there was a very interesting thing that they mentioned in the history of the samurai, is that the cherry blossom, or the sakura, like in Naruto, yeah, I know, but that is the flower of the samurai. It only appears once a year, and it only lasts for a couple of days, and it was meant to symbolize the dedication and loyalty of life and death to the daimyo, for the samurai. So like I said, guys, subscribe to the channel, guys. I got plenty more videos like this coming, man. And I'm going to get into breaking down the actual gameplay. But like I said, I wanted to give a foundational standpoint of the history behind this so that people can understand it. So what I'll probably be doing next is breaking down the combat tactics of the samurai, because some people were complaining about the combat in the game. But guys, trust me, you see the same stuff in games like Nioh and Sekiro. Like, that type of stuff is there for a reason, because it has to do with history and how they fight. So subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you don't miss a single upload, guys. That's all I have for right now. Till next time, thanks for watching. Peace.